For the past few years now, the world has been coming unglued at the seams, and most of the world knows it. The armies are being gathered together for battle as I speak, and they have been for some time now. Yet most of you who are among the scattered nations of Israel are fast asleep with your heads buried in the sand. In your arrogant hearts, you think that you are immune from or sheltered from what is going on in the rest of the world. Many of you see the signs of the times, yet you remain fast asleep with no regard to why our Creator is sending His wrath upon you. You could care less what His Word says about why He is sending His wrath upon you. You could care less that His Word says that He is sending it upon you because you have polluted His sanctuary by rejecting His Torah and by profaning His Sabbaths and by your putting no difference between the clean and the unclean. The news agencies that are in the English-speaking countries that you're in barely speak about what is really happening elsewhere in the world. Your news agencies are too busy speaking about the many scandals that are going on within your midst that you love to hear about. They are busy reporting to you about things like your elected officials raising the debt ceiling to cover your financial woes and them accusing one another for your woes that are going on in your midst. Granted, they do also cover some of the problems overseas, like what is going on in Egypt or in Syria or in Mali or in places like this. But their emphasis is that these are their problems and not yours. Most of your concerns are far removed from these problems because they are far from your home turf, and you think that they do not really involve you. That is, unless you have family members in the military, then they might concern you to some degree. Your agencies do report some of the things that are happening elsewhere in the world, though, but most of you could care less about these things. They do report on things like North Korea launching a long-range rocket or their plans to test another nuclear device. They do report Iran's nuclear ambitions and things like this, but most of you are not all that concerned on these things because, like I said, in your arrogant hearts, you think that you are immune or sheltered from them. You would rather focus on the swill and the scandals within your own countries. You think that your government's superior armed forces will protect you from what is happening elsewhere. What your news agencies do not talk about is how there are plans in place by others to replace the US dollar as the world currency, and how, when they do, it will sink the US economy. They rarely mention that the Muslim Brotherhood wants the infidels of the West to be destroyed, and that they are crying aloud for their jihad to happen so that your destruction will happen. They do not mention that China and Russia do not have their heads buried in the sand like you do. They barely speak about how there are powers in place who desire to destroy the Western way of life. They do not speak about how China and Russia are preparing for war against the U.S. and her allies as I speak. It was only a couple of years ago when China bragged about how their army had reached the number of 200 million soldiers. Do you think that it is a coincidence that this exact same number is spoken about in the book of Revelation in an end-time prophecy? It's found in Revelation chapter 9, verse 16. And the number of the army of the horsemen was 200,000. And I heard the number of them. Let's put the zeros in place and see what this number equates to. 200 times 1,000 equals 200,000. 200,000 times 1,000 equals 200 with 6 zeros behind it. That looks a lot like 200 million to me. Yep, China's announcement a couple of years ago that their army had reached 200 million was without a doubt just another coincidence. Maybe it is another coincidence that the verse before this reads in verse 15, and the 4 messengers were loosened to prepare for an hour and a day and a month and a year to slay a third of man. In prophecy, months are always 30 days in length. Therefore, a day and a month and a year equates to 391 days. Maybe it is another coincidence that our Creator has recently funneled His end-time timeline into a 391-day period that began this past December 25th and ends on January 20th of next year. Notice that there is also a reference to an hour in this prophecy. Maybe it is another coincidence that the revelations of our Messiah to the Apostle John also said in chapter 14, verse 7, saying with a loud voice, "Fear Elohim, and give glory to Him, for the hour of His judgment is come, and worship Him that made heaven and the earth and the sea and the fountains of the waters." And in Revelation 18:10, standing afar off for the fear of her torment, saying, Alas, alas, the great city Babylon, that mighty city, because in 1 hour your judgment has come. Maybe it is a coincidence that he led me to speak both of these verses last year in a video called The Flood and the Second Passover. And in this video, he tied in the timeline of the events of the flood along with the timeline of his second Passover opportunity that is in his second month, and with his timeline. And now he has continued to show how his timeline ties in with these events, with the here and the now. Maybe it is a coincidence that there is a witness on the ground that is an exact match to his prophecies that he gave to us to use to identify his end-time messenger of the covenant with when he sent him. Tomorrow is January 28th on Satan's calendar. This will be the 11th day of the 11th month on Yahweh's restored calendar. It was on this day that Noah let loose the raven and the first of 3 doves. Tomorrow we will be 357 days into the 391 days that began on this past December 25th. 7 days later will be the anniversary of Noah letting loose the second dove who brought back the olive branch. On this day we will be 350 days into the count. Noah lived for 350 years after the flood. Is this a coincidence? The timeline that Yahweh's word has testified to has been remarkable in details like this in the way that it has unfolded. But like I keep saying in these videos, this is not about these details, nor is it about any of these dates. For that matter, it is not even about the day of Yahweh's vengeance when it is. It is about why he is sending it. It is about whom he is unleashing it upon. It is about him sending it in order to humble a remnant of you into turning from your rebellion to him so that he will deliver you into the millennium to become the planting therein, to become part of a latter harvest into his family. It is about the restoration of all things and returning to that which he has restored. Granted, the details in how his timeline has unfolded have testified to his word and to the restoration of all things, but it is not about these details. Rather, it is about what they testify to. He has raised me up to be a watchman unto you. Not only has the testimony that he has sent me with been a witness against you, it has included me crying out for you to wake up from your slumber. The cry that he has sent me with has been for you to pull your heads out of the sand and to turn from your rebellion to the Most High. If you do not, then dying you will soon die. Tomorrow, on the anniversary of the first dove being sent forth, we are just 63 days out from this year's Passover. Open the scriptures to Psalm 63 and measure your heart against David's heart that is recorded in this chapter. It is hearts like David's whom Yahweh is building his eternal family from. It's not rebellious hearts. Turn from Satan's lies like the Easter Bunny celebration that he set up to replace the Passover with, and start preparing for this year's Passover and for the second Exodus. Wake up and cover your heads. Put your shoes on your feet and prepare for the Exodus that is at hand. Stop eating the bread of men. Uncover your lips and cry aloud with me, and spare not to warn others. Do not mourn nor lament for those who will not turn from their rebellion, but lament only for your own rebellion. Like I said, the armies are being gathered together for the battle as I speak, and they have been for some time now. And the rest of the world knows this. Time is short, and the prophesied time of Jacob's trouble is at hand. Thus saith Yahweh Elohim,